One of Kansas City's hottest hitters is coming from one of its unlikeliest players. We'll tell you who next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering how you can find this channel, what to expect from this channel, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length, and we also have the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and that should be posting any second now, but he comes to you live for about 15 to 20 minutes after each and every Royals game, and I'm sure he had a lot to talk about tonight when it came to Game 1 between the Royals and the Nationals. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now. I'm going to be quite honest that for a chunk of this game tonight, I was starting to come up with ideas about what we could talk about. And usually that is around the same time frame in a game when I start coming up with segment ideas. I'll wait till about the sixth inning before I start picking out segment 1, segment 2, and segment 3. And for the first 6 innings of tonight's game, I was going to have a hard time coming up with anything positive, what to look forward to, and how I could even spin it that, a Game 1 loss isn't as bad as it may seem. You know, even yesterday's game, that soul-crushing loss in Minnesota, I would have had a hard time coming up with one positive, let alone 2 or 3. But for tonight's game, it felt a lot different than what yesterday kind of resembled. Yesterday's game was soul-crushing for sure, and the Royals should have had far more than 3 runs in that game. But it was in a visiting ballpark and in a ballpark that they have not played well in for I don't know how long, really since it opened. Right, when Target Field opened in Minnesota, the Royals just started losing every single series possible there. As for tonight's game, you look at a Washington team that doesn't have a good starting rotation. They don't have a good bullpen at all. In fact, I believe they have the highest bullpen ERA among everybody in baseball. And the Royals were down at 1.4-2. Former Royal Paul DeYoung had homered. James Wood had homered. Bailey Falter, we're going to talk about in the second segment. He crushed one in the first inning. And you're just starting to think, man, if they can't comfortably win against Washington, what are we even doing trying to talk about what they need to go record-wise in certain stretches? Right? I said that to stay in it, to stay in this wild card race, they need to go 7-3 on this homestand. I would much rather prefer 8-2 or 9-1, but that would put them, I believe, 2 games over 500 if they were to go 7-3 on the homestand. They also get to face Texas to close out this homestand. But I would say that anything less than that, and you just can't really spin it that this team is going to be making the postseason. But if they would have lost tonight and they would have been 1-3 to begin this 13-game stretch, and you're probably having to win the next 9 to make it seem like you really took advantage, I just wasn't feeling too good into the 6th inning. Just because we had seen this story many times before. A guy the Royals had never seen. He pitches well enough, and then against bullpen guys who aren't very good, they can't scratch across any runs. We saw it in Minnesota. We saw them throw 5 or 6 bullpen guys out there on Sunday, and the Royals couldn't score more than 3 runs. But tonight, they get Salvador Perez to have a 2-run home run to tie the game. That loosened everybody up. And then Kyle Isbell crushed a go-ahead 2-run homer, and the Royals never looked back. Also, tip my cap to Mitch Stetter, who made an unbelievable catch on Kyle Isbell's homer in the bullpen. Not just a one-handed grab, but with his right hand going back. It wasn't the where he could cradle it almost. He had to stab it like an OBJ catch back during his prime. It was pretty impressive on a ball that was scalded into the bullpen. I wonder if his hand hurt at all after catching that. But the Royals never looked back. Carlos Estevez got his 30th save and now they are one game under 500, and they'll throw Michael Wacha tomorrow. Let's talk about one of the heroes, though, of tonight's game, because, of course, Salvador Perez homered. You had Kyle Isbell homering, but Adam Frazier, once again, just continues to produce at the plate. He had a 4-hit game on Sunday. He has a 3-hit game tonight. He is hitting .333 since rejoining the Royals. And I could go back to that podcast that we did when Adam Frazier was acquired. And I want to say we had 40 or so comments, 40 to 45, might have even been 50. And 90 to 95% of them were negative. Not that, it at the time could have been, I didn't go on that episode and say he's going to hit .333 in the first 20 to 25 games he's with the team. But we basically came to a conclusion that he's a fine depth piece. And they clearly felt that Adam Frazier would be a better depth piece than Cam Devaney. And a lot of people at the time said, how could you do that with, as bad as he was last year? Cam Devaney is still a rookie, even though he's 28, but he might become much more than Adam Frazier could ever be. And Cam Devaney's still stuck in AAA, Indianapolis, in the Pirates organization. And Adam Frazier has been one of the best hitters on this team since joining the club again. And it's nothing too special. It's not that he's hit 10 homers since joining the team. He has been a singles hitter, but a really good 2-strike hitter. And I believe that's been a huge boost for the Royals lineup. He hasn't been the driving force, right? You still count on Maikel Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny, and Salvi to be the driving forces in this lineup. But to be what he's been, it was a desperate need for the Royals to find somebody like that for the bottom of the order. And he's hitting in the middle of the order. And when you've seen Jonathan India struggle, Michael Massey can't stay healthy, and when he has been healthy, has not been very good. To have this type of production, it's huge. Because they were desperately searching just for somebody at the bottom of the order to give some relief. And if Adam Frazier would have come in and hit .250 in the way that he did for Pittsburgh, I don't believe it would have been seen as a negative trade. It would have been, no, it's fine. But to have a 4-hit game this year, to have a 3-hit game right after that, he just continues to set the table later on in the game. I wouldn't even hate it if at some point he hit higher up in the order. Now, I know that you're going to lead off Yaz, you're going to lead off Garcia, and you're going to have Bobby and Vinny and Garcia and Salvi after that. So there's really not a perfect spot for him. But I'd imagine there will be some games where he does lead off because he's got one of the better 2-strike approaches on the team. And I can't believe I would be saying that based off what he did last year. But he's a different and more polished hitter. It's strange to say for somebody that's nearing his mid-30s that last year he seemed completely lost to the plate multiple times. He couldn't hit for any power, and now you just almost expect him to get a hit when he's up there. He might fall behind 0-2, but he just guides it out into left field. It's what he did earlier on tonight. He drove in the first run of the game and then just continued to poke the ball into the outfield. It's what he does right now. It's not to say that it's going to last because I really don't know if it does. But Adam Frazier, in these 20 or so games, I really don't know the exact total because he did join the team right out of the All-Star break. His first game and his first at-bat was that go-ahead 2-run double in Miami that they later lost because Kyle Stowers had the walk-off 3-run bomb or 2-run bomb it might have been. But the Royals would not be where they are right now. And I know most people are going to say, well, they're 59-60. It's not that they are 8 games over 500 or playing the way that Seattle is or the way that Cleveland is or Boston where they're just rattling off winning streak after winning streak. But where this offense was at, there was a noticeable change once he joined this team. There's been more consistency. And I firmly believe it's just because you have a seasoned vet in the middle of the order that is over exceeding the expectations that were put for him. I mean, Jonathan India, I gave lofty expectations. You're hitting leadoff. You had the 5th best walk rate in baseball last year. You're going to get more hittable pitches because Bobby Witt Jr. is right behind you. He's not been good this year. He has not been a good leadoff guy this year for the Royals. Maikel Garcia's overseeded expectations. They wouldn't be where they're at right now if it wasn't for him. And if you didn't have this version of Garcia or this version of Adam Frazier or maybe this version of Vinny Pasquantino, they wouldn't even be close to 500. Their pitching staff could not make up for the offensive struggles. And to say that Adam Frazier has been one of those main contributors since the All-Star break to drive the bus a little bit, it's great to see. These, are likely the last 40 games for Adam Frazier in a Royals uniform, but I also thought that last year around this time. Well, he's not going to come back. They're not going to re-sign him, and they chose to go the Kevin Biggio and Mark Canha route this year, and they would have been much better off just bringing Adam Frazier back because he was pretty good for Pittsburgh before he got dealt over. And now, do you make the case that he's the best second baseman on the team and playing better than any second baseman has this season? Let us know in the YouTube comments below or let us know on Twitter. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, I want to talk about Bailey Falter's outing and what the Royals need to do moving forward. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about Gameday Hue. Gameday Hue makes clean, no-logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now is the time to load up. Let your colors talk because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com with code MLB15. Again, code MLB15. It was not a very impressive outing for Bailey Falter in his second start in a Royals uniform. The final line is not as bad as it was in Boston, but this time he was at home and he was facing a much worse lineup than he was in Boston. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, the line was better. I can take better things from it. I can make this seem more positive, but I really can't. I was not impressed whatsoever with Bailey Falter's outing. Not to say it can't get better from here, but I would have really loved to see him be more aggressive to certain guys in the lineup tonight. Early on in the game, he gets squeezed. In fact, the first batter of the game, James Wood, he walks on 4 strikes, basically. And then he does get back-to-back strikeouts, put away C.J. Abrams pretty easily, and then he did strike out Paul DeYoung. But then he just got, a little bit too comfortable in facing Josh Bell, and he left a hanger right over the plate, and it got absolutely crushed, obliterated to the fountains in left center field, and you're starting to go, man, same old, same old. Same thing we saw in Boston. A pitch or two away from getting out of a disastrous inning, and you leave one that's way too hittable. And Josh Bell crushed it. Those were the only 2 runs that he allowed, but he threw 75-ish pitches in 4 innings of work. He also struggled with command a little bit. He walked back-to-back guys in his final inning of work. Now, he did get out of it, got a pop-out, and then strikeout. Still, there were a lot of balls put in play that were crushed. So he had a little bit of good fortune there. And I thought that really tonight's outing, the 4 innings of 2-run ball, says more about Washington's lineup than it does about him grinding through it. Now, I'm not trying to be too harsh on the guy, but this was something we knew about Bailey Falter coming over. His numbers, just the underlying numbers, they were not impressive whatsoever. And his 3.73 ERA in 22 starts, a lot of it was starts like tonight, where he might go 5 or 6 innings and give up a run or 2, but he was hit incredibly hard. He wasn't as aggressive in the strike zone, and if he was aggressive, it was way too hittable, and guys were going to hit it hard. I just did not walk away feeling that great about his outing. And he is scheduled to make his next start, I believe, at the very end of that White Sox series, because it will be Waka tomorrow, then Lugo on Wednesday afternoon. You'll have the off day, should be Cameron, and then Bergert, and then it will be Falter on Sunday against Chicago, which would then set up Waka, Lugo, and Cameron to throw against the Rangers. That's exactly what you'd be wanting for a big series like that. But I am starting to wonder, with Michael Lorenzen coming back and the Royals in these, next stretch of games here, these next 3 series, they're going to need pretty much every starter to have their B-plus game at minimum. And tonight I thought that was a C- performance from Bailey Falter. He is going to be somebody that you just need to build a big lead with. And that kind of is the case anyway with number 5 starters. You're not asking these guys to go toe-to-toe with a good arm and, have the game at 1-1 going into the 6th inning. But I would be very curious to know on Sunday when he makes his next start, if he does. I'm assuming he will. But if the Royals get 4 runs in the 1st inning against Chicago and it's 4-0, can he get those early count outs? Because that's something we talked about before the Boston game. That's his bread and butter. He's going to need guys to swing early in the count and get soft contact. He's not going to be able to work in these 2-2, 3-2 counts because he doesn't have put away stuff. And he's going to get hit hard if he just throws a strike right down the middle. So with Lorenzen coming back, and by the way, Stephen Kolek went 6 1/3 a 1-run ball in his second start in Omaha. I'm wondering if there is a world in which you just move him to the bullpen and give the starts to either Michael Lorenzen or Stephen Kolek. A lot of it does come down to where this Royals team is at. If they sweep Washington and they take the first 2 against Chicago, I guess it's all right to start Bailey Falter, but then his next go-around would be against Detroit. And I don't know if I like that matchup for Bailey Falter in Detroit. It's still somebody that had good-ish numbers with Pittsburgh before coming over. It's not always going to look like this, but I almost wonder if a healthy Michael Lorenzen or a healthy Stephen Kolek and the stuff that he possesses would be a better number 5 starter for the Royals than Bailey Falter in a playoff push. It's not to say that Bailey Falter's time in Kansas City is done or he's not going to be able to start anymore. I just wonder if those 2 guys would be better fits for the rotation because you already do have a chunk of lefties in there. You do have, or I guess you did have a chunk of lefties. I would imagine Cole Reagans, or I thought Cole Reagans would be close to returning at this point, but he's just now scheduled to throw a bullpen on Friday per Andy Rogers. Lorenzen should be very close to returning, so maybe you start there. Is Lorenzen the better option moving forward, or is Bailey Falter? Do you give Bailey Falter another start on Sunday, or do you move to a 6-man rotation, give him some extra rest? I will say that if I was being brutally honest, I want to see Stephen Kolek a little bit before the season ends as well. Maybe that's in September, and they give him a nod in the rotation, or they just keep him in the bullpen. But I would like to see his stuff because what we've seen from Ryan Bergert has been really impressive. And if they could get that production out of Stephen Kolek, it's absolutely a huge upgrade over what you're getting from Bailey Falter. It's not to overreact to 2 starts, but they just haven't been 2 very good starts. And there's been a lot of issues, and there's been a lot of uncompetitive pitches, honestly, in these 2 starts. Stephen Kolek may come up and do just as bad. Michael Lorenzen could do just as poor as Bailey Falter, but the stuff needs some work. And I would much rather Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove and Mitch Stetter kind of sink their hooks into him and work with him in the offseason to upgrade that arsenal a little bit. Because it is tough to do at this stage in the season. He's made 20-plus starts before coming over to Kansas City. And now he's pitching in a much different environment where these games and these starts really matter, where they didn't as much in Pittsburgh. And he is the number 5 starter. If he goes out on Sunday, throws 5 innings, a 1-run ball, I'm not going to complain too much. But these teams that he's facing in these 2 starts are not good baseball teams. They are not good lineups. The next start he'd be making would be against Detroit. That is the first place team in your division and a team that is going to be going to the postseason this year. Do you want to roll the dice with him in a start like that? If you've been rattling off some wins and every single series against the top team becomes oh so crucial, that's a decision that Matt Quatrero and company are going to have to make. But after tonight, I would just say I wouldn't hate it if a Stephen Kolek or Michael Lorenzen makes that start on Sunday against Chicago. Time's running out. There's not really a lot of time to have a guy get his feet wet And if 3 starts don't show too much, maybe that 4th start you do turn to somebody else that can give you a higher upside and give you a better matchup than Bailey Falter could. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to talk about these next 3 series. You've got Washington for 2 more, Chicago for 3, and then you've got the Rangers as well for 4 to wrap up the 10-game homestand. They're going to need, at bare minimum, 1 sweep on this homestand. And if they could get 2, my opinion changes a lot about their postseason odds. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can check us out on wherever you listen to your podcast. I want to tell you more about our title sponsor in FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ for week 1, before week 1 even kicks off, this will be your moment. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. You know, I am going to take a flyer here on an MVP winner. I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but I do feel that Patrick Mahomes is going to add to his accolades in such a storied career already. I will take a futures bet there for him to win the 2025-2026 MVP award. These next 2 games against Washington, in my opinion, are going to tell us a lot about who the 2025 Royals are. And maybe I'm being overzealous, and maybe I am putting too much on 2 games against a team that's not very good. But we all know, at least if you've been listening to me long enough, we all know how important this homestand is. And it really does feel like their last chance to put themselves in a comfortable spot going into the end of August and into September. And they have just not had that really impressive stretch since they went 17-4 in April and in May, I believe. I think it was kind of a combination of both. But they have not had a stretch like that since then. They have played better baseball in the second half, but not good enough baseball to really put yourself in a threatening position. And you're not going to have another 10-game homestand like this. You're not going to have a 13-game stretch like this. It's why I'm putting so much on these next 2 games and really the next 9 games. You are 59-60. And for so much of the last 2 months, it's been, can you get to 500? Can you stay in it? Can you just be within striking distance? And the Royals have done that. They have been 4 games out. They have been 3 games out. They've been 2 games out. But they have not been able to get hot enough where you go, this team is absolutely gunning for a playoff spot, and now they're putting tremendous heat on the 3rd wildcard team. I mean, Cleveland was able to do that, and at one point this season, Cleveland lost 10 in a row. And after they left Kansas City, they played maybe their best baseball of the season. And now look at them. They're a game out of a playoff spot. Yankees lose tomorrow to Minnesota. They did win tonight. Cleveland was off. And Cleveland wins. Now you've got a tie for that 3rd wild card spot. Boston and Seattle have put themselves in a pretty solid position. So the 3rd wild card spot really feels like it's down at this point to New York, Cleveland, Texas, and Kansas City. Now, Cleveland and Texas are much closer than the Royals just when I look at it. It's only a game and a half difference between the Rangers and the Royals as I'm doing this podcast, because I know the Rangers and Diamondbacks were still playing when I began recording. But when you get under 3 games, that's when you feel like, man, it just takes 1 series. 4 games, it feels like the Royals have been 4 games out of a playoff spot for about 4 weeks. It just is odd in that way. Even when they've lost a series, you just look up and, oh, they're still 4 games out. Or when they win a series, oh, they're just 4 games out. So that's why it's critical for them to sweep Washington. Hence why I said these next 2 games are so important. You've got Michael Wacha throwing against Mitchell Parker, a lefty who's got a high 5 ERA. And then you've got Jake Irvin, I believe, going in the series finale, but you have Seth Lugo throwing. These have to be 2 wins for the Royals. To get to 61-60 with an off day, and then you have a weekend series, big crowds likely, with Noah Cameron throwing, then Ryan Berger, who's been good in his first 2 starts. And oh, by the way, you're just playing the White Sox. A White Sox team that you have had so much success against when playing at Kauffman Stadium. In fact, the White Sox haven't won a game at Kauffman Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, since 2023. Because they didn't win one in 2024, and I believe they have only come that one time to Kansas City, and the Royals swept them in 4 games. You have played exceptionally well against the White Sox at Kauffman Stadium. So if you win these next 2 and you're 61-60, you got a sweep to open up the homestand. Now you're licking your chops at this weekend series where you've got Noah Cameron throwing. You feel like Ryan Berger can have a good outing. And then, it's that toss-up with Bailey Falter or maybe somebody else throwing on Sunday. But it's all about the momentum. And you go 5-1, maybe not asking to sweep both series here, but you go 5-1 for the first part of this homestand to set yourself up with that 4-game showdown with Texas, a team that you already swept earlier on in the season. That's what can shake up a lot of the American League wildcard race. The Royals are just that team that's hovering around 500. And if you had to ask a Yankees fan who they're concerned about Cleveland, and they're concerned about the Rangers. I don't think they're concerning themselves with the Royals right now because 4 games, when you break it down, is still a pretty big chunk of games. But if you sweep Washington, and then you were to take 2 of 3 from Chicago, or better yet, shoot for the moon here, and they sweep the White Sox. They go 6-0. And now you're looking at this team being, what would that be, 64-60? You're 4 games over 500. I mean, the Guardians are 5 games over 500, and they're a game out. That's how quickly things can change here. And that's why this homestand is so pivotal. It was crushing to lose that series in Minnesota because it's a Minnesota Twins team that you should be beating up on. But baseball's unpredictable in that way. They could go out tonight and tomorrow night, and Michael Wacha could get shelled. As good as Wacha has been, that's the unpredictability about baseball. But you're just not going to get another stretch of games like you do on this homestand, where you get 2 teams that have less than 50 wins, setting you up to have a good record against a team that you are right behind in the American League wildcard race. It doesn't get much better than that with a 10-game homestand. It's one thing to have 10 games, but you got the Tigers, and then maybe you'd have like the Phillies or the Mets, and then you got Boston. Like, that's a brutal 10-game homestand. You've got 6 games right here for the taking, where you're going to have the advantageous matchup on the mound. And if your offense can stay hot like they were tonight, I like their chances. But is taking the series against Washington and taking the series against Chicago enough? You go 4-2? I don't know if it is. I believe you have to have at minimum 1 sweep of these 2 teams. You have to find a way to sweep Washington or sweep Chicago. And tomorrow night, if you win that one, I'm putting everything on Seth Lugo for Wednesday. You got to find a way to just mop the floor with the Nationals, take that off day. It's one of those great off days where you're already in your home city. You get to stay in your own bed and then get ready for the White Sox over the weekend. That's what can change a lot in this American League wildcard race. But I've said it so many times before. This is the time to get going. This is the time to turn things on, and only they are the ones that can get it done. But tonight, it was a positive to open up the homestand. They're now 1-0. You'd like to see them go 8-2 on this homestand, but I still believe that 7-3 is enough to keep them in the hunt. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're likely going to preview the upcoming matchup against the Washington Nationals. But if I get off work a little bit later on, just expect us to have the same time for the podcast as it was tonight. A little bit of recap of Game 2. So it might be a bit up in the air. Apologize for that. But my work schedule will be a little bit unique tomorrow. So promise you I'll get an episode up. Just don't know if it'll be right before the game or right after it. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.